Let us not start by calling each other names, nor forget how our words can be used to hurt through their double meanings and emphasis. Let's not have an interrogation. Let us remember that the only reason we're talking right now is because we're in love. We are in the university city. Gainesville, Florida finally emphasized the role of its university after the Second World War. The tourist industry had gone bankrupt with a market crash. The cotton culture was destroyed by a boll weevil. The phosphate landscape had been dried up from intensive mining to support the battle. The incoming students would be the new silent mobile force to drive this city into economic success. Gainesville's theme has always been one of transiency. All that has changed is the story's form. The consequences of this are devastating for both the audience and the author. Roads, once a length of entertainment and happiness, are now ghost towns because our city began speaking to a different audience. Or you could say the story began being translated from a different point of view. The author spoke of transiency through a scholastic rhetoric rather than a manufacturing vernacular. Sites of dilapidation and invention. I know it's a severe contrast. The audience never received a chance. But stories in Gainesville can be told only as a collaborative effort by both the audience and author. And if one becomes obsolete, so does that moment's counterpart. The text, under these social arrangements, creates and destroys its reader and its teller. Such is the nature of communication, what it means to be in love. What did it mean to be in love in 1957? A moment in which the story alters its form of representation. The reapportionment of Florida legislation meant that the number of representatives from each region would be proportionate to the population of that represented region. The characteristics of the majority lawmaker would drastically change. It is with the eroding power of the previous legislation that the Florida Legislative Investigative Committee convened for the first time under direction of Senator Charlie Johns. The 7-person Joint Committee's intentions were to, quote, investigate all organizations whose principles or activities include a course of conduct on the part of any person or group which would constitute violence or violation of the laws of the state. The initial target was the NAACP, which had been fighting to integrate Florida schools following the U.S. Supreme Court's 1954 ruling of Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, which determined separate but equal conditions as unconstitutional. The committee attacked the NAACP as a, quote, communist front organization and the breeding grounds for subversive and un-American activities. Integrationists, communists, and homosexuals were targeted by Flick over 9 years, primarily in universities throughout the state. By April 1963, 71 university instructors had had teaching certificates revoked, and 39 deans or professors had been fired due to accusations of guilt by the Johns Committee. Some professors attempted suicide after their careers were ruined by defamation. At least 250 other educators were investigated for suspicion of being subversive. These are the official numbers. In Gainesville, John Wayne Wrights had announced the dismissal of 16 professors and approximately 50 students as a result of the committee's investigations. What was it that I said? And why do you immediately interpret these words as hostile accusations against you? Are you forgetting who is speaking? Does it matter? Under what circumstances should it matter that I was the one saying this to you? Who am I to ask for that? Is it too much to ask, to give the benefit of the doubt in this one instance? Everything is still. We both should have left by now, yet we still sit, focused on different segments of the floor. One way or another, after all of this, I will have been unfair. As you demand the facts, you repeat the quotations of what we both said and refuse to look beyond it. It will only mean to me that love is an act of perpetual forgetting. Or, asking you to realize the speaker behind these words means our past is more important to me than your present. Is love a fact or a fiction? The choices seem inadequate right now. We are limited by these absolute words, these square roots, our blueprints. As it stands, an architecture of absolutes must fall at only the slightest breath or dream. The primary difficulty of representing this moment has been the lack of willingness or availability of survivors to participate. And why should they? The more I thought about it, the more it seemed completely unreasonable to document the Johns Committee investigations by doing an interview. Students and professors were given a voice so that they could be punished. I won't provide you with any examples. You may have been pulled from a classroom and brought to a private hotel room for questioning. During these hearings, you were asked to substantiate the charges against you or risk being subpoenaed to stand trial for homosexuality. Testimonies are turned into accusations so that I am the one offending. Questions of sexual perversion are asked with the implication that the investigators have proof of guilt and only want your admission to wrap up the case. Maybe if my words are reduced to accusations, A fact, a simple truth. They are easier to deal with than if you have to really figure out what could be so wrong.
The professor maintained that the investigators made references to pictures, statements, records, and observations, but did not substantiate their remarks. He added that threats to his reputation were followed by gentle coaxing and appeals to reason.
Every word is interpreted as guilt. Your words are giving meaning you never intended. The more you speak, the more anonymous you will become. You feel pushed 1,000 miles, no, 40 years away from the present moment.
Sworn statement of witnesses made on the 5th day of January 1959 in Room 10 Hotel, Thomas, Gainesville, Florida. Transcribed by Richard H. Lee, Notary Public, Official Court Reporter. Interview by Chief Counsel of the Committee, Mark R. Haas.
Did any of these other people ever take your penis in their mouths, sir?
On a couple of occasions.
Where was that?
Well, I guess up at the library.
Up at the library at the university?
Yes.
How long ago was that, sir?
I imagine it was 5 or 6 years ago. I haven't liked it. I have been trying, and as I told Mr. Strickland and this gentleman, I have been trying to cure myself, and I have been trying to do all I could to cure myself of this, and I think I have done it.
Who were these people?
I have no idea because... Don't look at me like that. Because I don't know who they were.
Mr. Blank.
I am not telling a lie.
How long have you been going to the restroom at the county courthouse here for this sort of activity?
Well, I don't know how long it's been. I was not aware of the courthouse being there the first year I was here. Sometimes I had to urinate, and I would go in there when I was downtown shopping.
Listen to me, Mr. Blank. I don't want you to get fouled up in this record, and I am not trying to trick you. Isn't it true that you have gone there just for that purpose over the years?
It is not possible to say, not every time.
I'm not asking you to say whether it is possible. Have you ever been there just for that purpose?
Yes.
A simple answer and the simple truth is what I want, Mr. Blank.
I'm doing my best.
Then your record will be straight, and we will be straight with you.
Yes.
And there won't be any difficulty about your testimony.
Yes.
If you will just give simple, direct, truthful answers.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned a restroom at the University of Florida Library. Is that the main library?
That was at the main library, yes.
What contacts have you made in the restroom at the University of Florida Library?
Well, the only contact is that the people are coming in there all the time, and as I told Mr. Tilston and Mr. Strickland, I have noticed quite a lot of homosexual activity being carried on there.
In that restroom?
In that restroom.
And you have participated in some of it?
Yes, in some of it.
There's an expectation between us that says I will be able to resolve everything if I simply agree to my offenses. In which case I become the most comfortable when we are furthest from our responsibilities. When you are playing an active role and I am reading passionately along. Too soon, though, I get nervous, paranoid. I have only so much time to waste. I feel myself being smeared into inescapable sentences. I begin naming names to bail myself out. Speaking slowly, clearly, repeating sentences from an hour ago. So much time is spent wondering what this would look like if my intentions were not hidden by the distortion of your interpretations, if our distinctions between action and passivity could be reconciled.
Defining homosexuality is the principal difficulty, according to Dr. Schumacher. It is a relatively common aberration in sexual behavior. If everyone were dismissed from the university who has homosexual traits to one degree or another, we would lose a very large number of people. A lot depends on who is defining what a homosexual is, declared the psychiatrist. He explained that the definition under the law, as expressed in court decisions, differs considerably from the concept of the average layman or the definition used by people who study human behavior.
Where do you draw the line? Asked Dr. Schumacher. Charlie Johns believed homosexuals were a product of their environment, and a proliferation of gay teachers were, quote, recruiting students into homosexual practices. All of this is officially documented. Installed truth. Flick sought to prevent this subversive instructing by surveilling the spaces where it occurred. The Johns. The site of subversive training is the one site of privacy within the public institution. It is also the site of excess and waste, where we shit and fix our hair, the fictions to the classroom facts, where we perform the bodily functions that make all other places seem undisturbed. Johns. Excess and waste has become the only site of truth-telling, the site where evidence is gathered to convict faculty and students of homosexuality. Perhaps, then, to evoke the historical moment of the Johns Committee, I should return to these official sites of truth. Collect the spaces of other possible teaching practices, of another type of storytelling. Today, within these same stalls, looking for what? They will not speak the fear, the paranoia, the racing heartbeat of those on their moment of discovery, the violence and acts of translation. Officer Tileston is no longer patiently waiting, watching for the bottom line, for an opportunity to pretend, to perform as one of them. His faith in facts, the bottom line. Faith in words will excuse his conscience again tonight, will exempt him from accusation, because on what grounds will fact and fiction finally relate? This setting, the small cracks in the spaces of the institution's bathroom stalls, became the site for the fictive, the unbelievable, unacceptable practices in the university. What Officer Tileston constantly found surveilling these bathrooms was that the categorization men did not as absolutely determine individuals as he assumed. The exact site where sex defines our identity becomes the exact moment in which gender, the corresponding performance of one's sex, becomes so slippery, so unfaithful. The horror for Charlie Johns was the recognition that there is a room for fiction in every definition. In the hot summer of 1993, 45 boxes, totaling 4,000 documents compiled by the Johns Committee, were formally opened to the public. Governor Lawton Chiles responded,
"It ought to be very interesting to finally see the record after so many years of secrecy. I didn't regret voting to create the Johns Committee, but wouldn't want to see another one. I suspect that was virtually a unanimous vote at the time. I certainly don't remember having any qualms about it,"
said Chiles.
"I don't think today we could create a committee like that."
The talented 20% of Florida high schools. The bottom line. Percentages are another form of surveillance. Those who receive the highest marks are welcome to UF, without preference to gender, ethnicity, or race in the admission policy. History, says the Florida legislator, is no longer a variable of concern. The desire for an architecture exempt from dreams, from excess and waste. a text to enter for a specific kind of audience, a specific kind of author. This is an act of communication, what it means to be in love in 1957. Let me make this plain and simple. Love is no longer an act of subversion. How responsible can love be within historical moments in which excess and waste are the only settings in which we can count on ever meaning?